A story told to me by my neighbor John.
It all happened the night a true ice storm hit our street. It was one of those January evenings in Maine where everything just stops. The snow fell heavy and thick, muffling every sound like the world had been wrapped in cotton. I was home, wrapped in a blanket, holding a mug in my hands, when suddenly, without warning, the power went out. Just a click, and darkness swallowed everything. At first, I just sat there in silence. Then I went to grab my flashlight. Dead batteries. Checked the heat. Nothing. Cold was creeping in through the windows, and just as a strange unease began to settle in, someone knocked on the door. It was John, my elderly neighbor. He stood there in an old army coat, snowflakes sticking to the brim of his weathered hat. "You out of power too?" he asked, voice gravelly. I nodded and stepped aside to let him in. Luckily, I still had a gas camping stove I'd bought for a recent trip. I boiled some water and poured us both a strong, earthy tea. We settled in at the kitchen table, the only light coming from two flickering candles whose shadows danced across the walls like something alive. We sat quietly for a while, listening to the wind moaning outside, scratching against the glass. And then John spoke. "This might sound strange," he said slowly, "but the dark, the candles, this tea, it all reminds me too much of that one night." He looked straight into the flame. "My great-grandmother. That story. I was just a kid, maybe 6, but I remember it too well, like it never left." I didn't say a word, just pushed his mug toward him, and he began. "Her name was Margaret, my great-grandmother. She lived not far from here, near the old bridge. People used to say she had a gift. She could see spirits, not the Hollywood kind. No floating objects or glowing orbs, just feelings, shadows, whispers. Sometimes she'd talk to them. Of course, I didn't believe any of that, not until I saw it for myself. It was winter, the cold kind that makes trees crack at night. My great-grandfather, your typical New England man, worked on the railroad. He'd stay overnight in the signal cabin near the tracks. That night, it was just me and Margaret at home. She went out that evening to fetch water from the river. When she came back, her face was white as snow. I asked what happened, but she just stared at the wall. Later that night, I overheard her talking to my great-grandfather when he got home. "There was no one there," she whispered. "Not a soul, just snow and silence. But then I heard it, someone calling my name." She said she turned and saw a man standing on the frozen river, wearing a long, tattered coat. But his face, she said, it was blurred, like someone tried to draw it and erased it halfway. He didn't move, he just stared. And then, he stepped forward and vanished beneath the ice. No cracking, no splash, just... Then came the dream. She stood at the same river, in the same cold, and the man appeared again. Only this time he came closer, and whispered, "He's coming for you. You open the door." That's when the strange things started happening. The house began to smell, like wet ash, as if someone had burned damp firewood. The mirrors fogged from the inside, though the place was cold. Linda, our cat, stopped sleeping near her. She hissed at empty corners and hid under the stairs. At night, we heard footsteps, sometimes right next to the bed. And every now and then, a breath, heavy, tired, like someone who'd walked a long way. Then came the letter. Her brother, Thomas, was dead, drowned, in that same river. He'd gone missing 3 days before she saw that man on the ice. A blizzard had delayed the search. They found him frozen beneath the surface, and his face was just like that man's, wiped clean, no features. Margaret said, "That wasn't Thomas. That thing on the ice, that wasn't him. Thomas came to warn me, but I misunderstood. And now, something else is coming." After that, she changed. She started talking to the mirror, not out loud, just her lips moving, silently. I once caught her staring into it like someone was staring back, like it wasn't a reflection, but a window. And then came the last night. The power went out, only in our house. I woke up because the mirror in her room creaked open on its own. And in its glass, I didn't see her room, or myself. I saw a shadow, tall, elongated, and a face like melting wax. I screamed, but Margaret didn't come. In the morning, I found her by the window, alive, but like something inside her had been burned away. She didn't speak, just wrote something on a piece of paper, her hand shaking. He's in the mirror now. He watches from inside. I'm not alone anymore. We covered that mirror after that, with cloth, then with nails, and one day, it was just gone. No one ever found it. But sometimes I think, maybe it didn't vanish. Maybe it just moved. Maybe he just needed a new reflection. John stopped talking. The candles were almost out. The wind outside had finally gone still. I glanced at the mirror in the hallway and quickly looked away. The lights came back on a few minutes later. But that night, I covered my mirror with an old blanket, and I've never uncovered it since. Because now, I know he really is watching.